Hello class, welcome to week 9. Today we'll be talking about responsive design, mobile first, and mobile design challenges. Responsive design. Up until 13 years ago, people only designed for desktop. Why was this? Well, until June 29th, 2007, the iPhone had not been released, and until that point, there was only a very small number of users that had mobile devices capable of viewing the web. Typically, before that point, it was BlackBerry and some other kind of smart devices that existed, and some of them did have rudimentary web surfing, but the experience was often very poor and broken. It wouldn't render the way a normal web browser would. Um, and also, web access on phones at that time was very, very expensive. You could easily get a bill for super mild web usage that would be in the hundreds of dollars. The iPhone was the first device that allowed you to view the web in a way that came close to the desktop experience. Apple also made deals with telecom providers to bring down the price of access. So those two things together really open up the possibilities of, you know, surfing the web and enjoying internet access on your mobile device, and made it kind of something that people wanted for the first time. Even after the release of the iPhone, it took many years before people started designing websites specifically for the mobile experience. Typically, when you got an iPhone and you went to a web page, you got the desktop view of the site. And back then, if you wanted to view the content, because the content would be tiny, tiny, you would have to double click on the content and read it there. I actually didn't mind that experience, and in some ways, I think it was sometimes was better than the mobile experience that we have now. But at least I could choose to read it the way I wanted to instead of having it pre-formatted for me in a mobile format. Um, Early mobile websites were actually completely different websites. So there would be the main desktop experience that would be your regular website. You go to a domain like gap.com and you get the desktop. Um, Mobile websites were often, you'd be redirected to a completely separate website that was built just for mobile experiences. And they often didn't have the same content as the main website. There would be many times you'd click on a link that somebody had sent you, you would go to the mobile version of the website and the page would not be found. So this is obviously a super frustrating experience for users. So typically they were like light versions of the site. They wouldn't put the same effort into it because at the time, mobile users were a very small part of the audience, so there was less of interest in kind of tailoring content for that audience. Now, the biggest difference between mobile design and desktop design is, well, there's two big differences. The screen real estate, how much space you have to work with, and also, on your laptop or on your home computer, your browser is usually in a landscape format, and a landscape is a rectangle that's, you know, uh, wider than it is tall, to make it as simple as possible. On mobile devices, even though you can turn them sideways, it turns out that the vast majority of people never turn their phone sideways unless they're viewing a video. That experience is called portrait because it's taller than it is wide, because it's easier to hold in your hand that way, and people are just used to it. Um, Looking at that, it's obvious that something designed for landscape will not fit so well in portrait because it just isn't as wide. Since the advent of mobile devices, we've seen an explosion of screen sizes and orientations. The number only increases over time as new mobile devices and tablets come to the market. So, when it was originally just iPhones, there was only a few screen sizes you had to worry about. But with the advent of especially Android devices, the different kinds of screen sizes and the available real estate, and even the aspect ratio, varies wildly across devices. And there's been a proliferation of Android devices, so there's many, many screen sizes. And obviously, designing for all these screen sizes, if you did it, one at a time, would take forever. It would be an impossible task. So, how do we design for this exploding number of screen sizes and aspect ratios? Well, what we do now is something called responsive design. And as the name would indicate, what is responsive design? Responsive design means the site responds to the size of your screen. Most notably, the width of your screen. The height can be important as well. If you want like a full bleed image or something, you need to take into consideration the height of the screen. But for the most part, it's the width. So the website calculates the width of the viewable area and displays content based on that width. So it's not just that, because you can build a site that looks at the width of your browser and then shows the content based on that width. True responsive design should flow as you resize the browser. So if you're on desktop, you can't really do that on mobile, but if you're on desktop, if you resize the browser from like super wide all the way down to narrow, you should see the content flow and change. And then eventually when you're super narrow, become the mobile website. This is the best way to kind of design for all these different screen sizes. Yeah, I covered this already. Yeah, so this class isn't about programming, so I'm not going to get into the details of how it's done in terms of front-end programming, but you should know that basically what you can do is you can scale images and text, and you can reflow text, and you can also restack content areas based on the width of the width of the display. Now, there's something that should be noted here. Creating a responsive design is super challenging for a designer because whereas you had to in the days of just desktop browsers do a design that pretty much worked in the available width of a desktop browser. Now you have to take into consideration how that content changes when the user resizes the screen, and it's very, very difficult to maintain design integrity as it's doing that. You're going to probably, even no matter how well you try it, there's going to be one size you open that screen to where the content won't look super great. And you've probably seen that, in your web surfing. Um, it's hard to take into account all the possible permutations. The easiest way to do it is to make the site design very, very simple, very clean, and try to remove as many kind of widgets or eye candy or decoration and just let the content speak for itself. So um, the way we do design for responsive design is we set breakpoints. So a breakpoint is, there'd be a mobile breakpoint, which would be a very narrow width. There'd be maybe a tablet breakpoint, which would be tablet size, which is not quite as wide as desktop. It's somewhere in between the mobile view and desktop. And then desktop, which is more of a landscape aspect ratio. So as a designer, if you were taking your project into the design phase, you would have to lay out what it looks like in those three breakpoints, and the developers will make it uh, responsive in between those three breakpoints. Now, there could be two breakpoints. We've done some sites that are just mobile and then desktop, and there could be more than three breakpoints. Depends on how fancy you're going to get. Obviously, the more breakpoints, the more work it takes for everybody. The idea here is you want to kind of make sure it looks good no matter what size you have the window open to. So I got ahead of myself here, but these are the three most common breakpoints: mobile, which is portrait; tablet, which is kind of squarish; and desktop, which is more landscape. I have a little video here that kind of shows you what what happens between sites that have no breakpoints and sites that have breakpoints. You can see the one on the left that has breakpoints. The content actually shifts and changes as you resize. The one without breakpoints, it just scales all the content to fit in the available space. So that can work in some cases, but you'll find with sites that have a lot of content that it doesn't work as well. So we tend to try to do things with breakpoints so that the 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 design changes and shifts based on the width of your browser. So most modern sites are responsive. If you go to your favorite website and narrow the size of the window down, you'll see how the design responds. And I encourage you to do this, like any website you're on currently. Just try dragging like the right side of the browser back and forth and see how it changes and shifts. Um, you'll see when you start getting into a mobile view when the navigation will likely disappear at the top and you'll get a hamburger menu. A hamburger menu is named because it looks like a hamburger. It's usually three lines in the top left or top right corner. And what ends up happening is the navigation, which usually takes up a lot of horizontal space, at some point can't be accommodated in the width, the viewable width, and it collapses into a hamburger menu. And if you click on, I have to apologize. I'm in my office today, and it's quite there's quite a few people here, so it's noisy. I apologize for that. Um, yeah, when you click on the hamburger menu, you get the full navigation as sort of a popover. So I took a screen cap movie here to show you the Atlantic, which I think is a good example of responsive design. And you can see as I'm dragging the page, not only is content resizing, um, one of the columns disappeared early, and you were left with one side column. And then eventually, when you get to mobile, that side column's gone. So let's have a look at that one more time. So you have like three columns. At some point, the left column disappears. That would be a breakpoint. So, and then at some point, the right column disappears, and that would be the mobile breakpoint. Just look at it one more time here. You can see there's not much navigation at the top, and they already have the hamburger menu at the beginning. But some sites you'll see will have a full navigation, and then that navigation will disappear and turn into a hamburger menu as you go. So there you can see how it would be challenging to design for this format because not only the image is changing size, but the margin widths are changing dynamically as well, and that's tricky to design for. All right, so that's responsive design. Let's move on to mobile first. Mobile first has become kind of a catchphrase. Um, to jump ahead a little bit, it means designing for mobile first. Why do we do this? Well, as time goes by, more and more users on the internet are only using mobile devices to access content on the internet. This is for a bunch of different reasons. First of all, mobile devices are cheaper than desktop computers for the most part. They're also accessible to people in poorer countries, and maybe their only computing device. So as time goes by, we're going to see a greater and greater proportion share of mobile users to desktop users. I'm already having clients telling me that they're seeing more mobile users on their website than desktop users. So if you take that into account and you're thinking forward into the future, mobile becomes even more important than a desktop site. So yeah. This means increasingly there are people who only access the web on mobile. So if your mobile site's not up to snuff, then you're going to be missing out a significant portion of your audience. Mobile first design is a design philosophy that aims to create a better experience for users by starting the design process from the smallest of screens, mobile. Designing and prototyping your websites for mobile devices first helps you ensure your user's experience is seamless on any device. Um, I take a little. Mobile first is kind of a hot term right now, and clients keep suggesting that we do that. You really still have to design the desktop experience, and they it doesn't really matter to a huge degree which one you start with because basically usually you're stripping stuff out of your desktop design to accommodate the mobile design, and there's only kind of so many ways you can do that. So even though clients may want to see mobile designs first, I find that it doesn't usually improve the process. But since we're talking about that, and since you're going to hear that term a lot once you get out to the working world, let's talk about it a little bit more. So here's some 3 tips for good mobile design. The first one is mobile first, is content first. So that means the content is the most important thing, not the design and the layout, hopefully the layout to some degree, but the content that's actually on the page. That's why people are there. 2, make it easy to navigate. Navigation is a challenge on mobile devices. KISS, sorry, I didn't make this up. Don't take offense. Keep it simple, stupid. And we're going to talk about those in the following slides. So mobile first equals content first. When it comes to mobile first design, you need to remember one thing: content is key. You need to give your users all the content they're looking for and only that. Anything else might clutter and distract you from the user's experience. 2, make it easy to navigate. Condense your secondary elements into easy to reach navigational buttons. One tried and true method of doing this is by using a hamburger menu. So we talked about hamburger menus already. Hamburger menus are recognizable ways for your users to attain access to secondary elements. If you don't have one on the page already, chances are users know to go to the hamburger menu to find what they're looking for. So there is one caveat to hamburger menus. Um, it kind of reduces user engagement. Um, that's a problem because because user can't see the navigation element on the screen. They don't even know they can do that thing, whatever it is. They actually have to click on the hamburger menu to be able to see where they can navigate, and a lot of users just don't end up doing that. So there is a downside to it. You should make any kind of links that are very important. Um, you should make them very obvious on the site, and not bury them in a hamburger menu if they're mission critical. KISS, keep it simple, stupid. A good mobile design is simple. And this is true for design overall. You never want to burden your users with extraneous elements like ads, pop-ups, and other content they don't want to see, but especially not on mobile. Limit your limited visual real estate to only including the things they're on the page for. So, do your best to kind of keep keep the experience as simple as possible, and don't get too fancy or too clever with navigation elements. And that brings us to mobile design challenges, where we're going to talk a little bit about some of those elements we just spoke about. I really this is you know I really kind of boiled this down and simplified it as much as I could to make it straightforward and easy to access, rather than being too didactic and wordy about it. So the two main challenges for mobile design: your big fat finger and available real estate. So I'm saying big fat finger as a joke. Some of us have little tiny thin fingers, but pretty much all our fingers are pretty big, and that means you have to design to accommodate that. Now on the right here, I was looking for a bad mobile website. This isn't the worst one. It's pretty bad, but it's not the worst one. Daily Mail is like terrible desktop or mobile. It's the website is covered with ads. You get this thing at the top that encourages you to download their app, which is, I just want to read an article. I don't want to download an app. You have permanent advertising on the bottom that you can't get rid of. And there's a ton of advertising in the content of the actual page itself. You also have you have a top column there with a search bar, and then another column, which I think this is a bit bananas, with a bunch of share icons. This is kind of fallen out of favor, having share icons displayed like this. Most people just share it the way they want to. They don't need a button to do it. And look how much space that takes up on the screen. You know, Between that and the download the mobile app banner, that takes up maybe like a quarter of the screen, leaving, what, like, uh, you know, you got that at the top, and you maybe have like 3/8 of the screen that's available for content. Anyway, so yeah, that's right. Your big sausage fingers versus your limited screen real estate. You can see these are two sides of the same coin. You have to make things big for your fingers, but you have to have enough room to display the content you want to display. So let's talk about your fingers a little bit. So desktop computers began with mouse input, and the great thing about mouse input is that it's the hit area, and by hit area I mean in what is clickable, is very, very small. You can click on very, very small, tiny things, tiny links. You can click on radio buttons, check boxes, no problem. It's very, very easy to do. But mobile devices use touchscreens, and because they use touchscreens, they require your finger, and your finger is not as accurate as a mouse click. The hit area that you have to leave for your fingertip is vastly larger than what you have to do for a mouse. And the other thing too is not only do you have to make the hit areas bigger, you have to space the clickable items out so you don't get accidental inputs, so that you don't, like, when you're trying to use your finger, hit the wrong thing, because that's a bad user experience. To make things even more complicated, screen sizes are getting larger. And what that means, like I have an iPhone 8, which isn't even a new phone, but I can't actually, my hands aren't small, but I can't actually comfortably reach the top of the screen with my fingers. I would have to hold it with two hands. And most people like to operate their phone with one hand. So not only do you have to have big buttons, you're limited in where you can place them, where it's easy to access. Um, so, generally speaking, if you have anything that you want people to access very quickly, you see this more in apps than websites because there's limitations with what you can do with websites. But you'll often see the main navigation buttons are along the bottom of the phone because that's much easier for you to get to with your thumb. There might be stuff at the top of the page, but that's usually secondary and less important. So that, if somebody has to reach, they're not reaching for something that they need to click on to get to complete what they're doing, the task that's at hand, or to see the content they want to see. The solution: prioritize navigation items. Make sure the most used have large hit areas and are available at the bottom of the screen. Less used items can be in the hamburger menu. So this is something that you usually have to discuss with clients when you're in the beginning of the design process. Is if you get the client to prioritize, um, what sections are the most important for the users. You obviously should help them. You should recommend. You should say like this is the key content that users are looking for. These should be the priority, but that's obviously a discussion with your client. There's going to be some back and forth about that. So screen space, screen space is often known in the industry as real estate. It's how much real estate do we have to work with here? That's a common saying. So we don't have a lot of real estate. We have, on desktop, we have a ton of real estate. Um, it's making a one-to-one connection between the size of your screen and like the size of property. I'm not sure how that came into common usage, but that's pretty much what people say. Um, Yeah, so the two things to consider are the size of the screen, like how big it is. Some phones, flagship phones, are much larger screens, and some of the cheaper burner phones have much smaller screens. The second thing that's a consideration is the aspect ratio, and so we talked about that earlier. Is like portrait and landscape, right? So the aspect ratio of a landscape screen can be 16 by 9 or something like that. There's actual ratio numbers you can use to describe it, but basically speaking, it's like that rectangle, is it tall and thin or is it wide and short? And those are aspect ratios. So, on some sites, this problem is increased due to the presence of advertising, social share, alerts to download the app, pop-ups to be added to mailing list, and cookie alerts. So, and this is common actually for desktop sites as well. I'm often annoyed by how many sites I have to click through some mailing list pop-up that obscures the content, cookie things. Like I just wish I could just tell my browser to accept all cookies. I don't care. You know what I mean? Like I hate clicking that thing. I especially hate cooking the cookie alert when it's a site I've been to many times. Just like I wish I could just remember my setting. I just remember that I'm fine with cookies. You don't have to ask me every single time. Obviously, on mobile sites, this is 1,000 times worse because you've got tiny screen real estate. Um, so yeah, there's a battle here for real estate, and it's why they do it. There's business reasons for it, but those business reasons go directly against uh, users' ability to kind of use the site well. And how many times does this cause people to drop off? Well, I think the key thing to consider there is like is value. So if people are coming to a site where there's something they really want to look at, like there's a news article they really want to read, they'll click through these things. I don't think they should have to, but they're more likely to click through those things if there's content and value at the end of the end of this process. If it's something that's not high value, people aren't going to do it. You're going to lose users. So, that's the thing you can use to kind of evaluate and judge, how much you should push back on these business needs. I've included these screens, and this is from a great page. So I recommend that, if you get a chance to look at it, because it's hilarious. It's called Modern Web Design, and it talks about all these silly things. But you've all seen these screens. This website is best viewed in our mobile application. And you have to. No, I just want to see the web page. I don't want your mobile app. I got enough mobile apps. This website uses cookies. Continue. Did you know you can sign up? You've all seen these things. So, as user advocates, you should definitely try to work with your clients to not have these things, especially on mobile sites. It's often an uphill battle because the client really wants these things, right? Like they want people to sign up for the newsletter. For cookies, they're required by law in some jurisdictions to include those cookie notices. Um, And mobile apps, they believe that, once somebody's downloaded an app for that site, that they will access the site content, that they're kind of locked into a walled garden. So there's a strategy for that as well. I don't know how true that is anymore. I think people are kind of burnt out on downloading apps. They'll only download an app if it's got high value. But remember, your job as a UX designer is to advocate for the user. So your job is to try to make the best experience for the user. And it means sometimes going to battle with the clients to try to do that. And you should. You won't always win. But maybe if you get a compromise, it might be worth it. So, you know, that's my advice to you is fight for the user. You may have to kind of move back a little bit, but don't just cave in whole hog to clients' requests. They have to make money, they have a business to run, they know what's best in that regards. But is this really what your users want, or is this going to make people want to come back to the site? All these things have to be considered. And that is it for week 7. So it's taco time, and enjoy. I hope you enjoy your week. Please read the class announcement if you are coming. If you're not coming from the class announcement, it's very important. It's about assignment 3, and I think you all should read it. All right. Thank you. Have a great week.